Hello everyone and welcome to the second video of this series about the basics of C# with Unity. Today we are going to talk about arithmetic operators. These operators are essential for performing calculations and manipulating numerical data. The arithmetic operators in C# are the plus sign for addition, the minus sign for subtraction, the asterisk for multiplication, the slash sign for division, and the percent sign for remainder. That's the remainder of a division. Here are some calculations to illustrate. For example, here we can declare a variable addition and initialize it with the value 7 plus 5. So we will place the value 12 in our variable. We can do the same thing with a variable subtraction, where we place the value 13 minus 8, so 5 in the variable. The same thing can be done with multiplication. For example, 4.2 multiplied by 2.3, in which case we will place 9.66 in the variable. If we do the same thing with division, for example 5.1 divided by 1.7, we'll place the value 3 in division. And finally, for the remainder, for example here, 13 remainder 4, we are going to obtain the remainder of the division of 13 by 4. So 13 divided by 4, the result is 3, and the remainder is 1. So we are going to place the value 1 in the remainder. We can also use values contained in variables. For example, we declare a variable a which contains the value 7, and a variable b which contains the value 3. And finally, we can declare a variable results which contains the results of the addition between a and b. So in this case, we will have the value 10 in results. Some operators have a higher priority than others. For example, multiplication, division, and remainder have a higher priority than addition and subtraction. This is the same priority as in mathematics. For example, here, if we do a calculation of 3 plus 4 multiplied by 5, we'll get the result 23, because multiplication takes precedence over addition. So first we do 4 times 5, and then we add 3. If you want to change the way the calculation is done, you can add a parenthesis. For example here, around 3 and 4. So that first you have the addition, 3 plus 4, which is then multiplied by 5. So 7 times 5, 35. Operators with the same priority are evaluated from left to right. In this example here, 3 divided by 4 multiplied by 5. Here we have a division and a multiplication. They have the same priority, so they are evaluated from left to right. First, we'll do 3 divided by 4, and then we'll multiply by 5. This gives the result 3.75. If you want to change this order, you can add parentheses, as for example here around 4 times 5. In this way, first we'll have 4 times 5, which gives 20, and then we'll do the division, 3 divided by 20, which gives the result 0.15. When you want to perform a calculation with the value contained in the variable and store the result in the same variable, you can use a shortened form of writing called compound assignment. For example, here I declare a variable a which is initialized with the value 5. I can then write the shortened form a plus equal 2. This means that I am going to add 2 to the value already contained in my variable a, and store the result in the same variable. This is the same as writing a equal a plus 2. You can do the same thing with subtraction. For example, here a minus equals 3. I subtract 3 from the value already in a. It's the same as writing a equal a minus 3. You can do the same thing with multiplication. For example, a multiply equal 4. And you can do the same with division. For example, a divided equal 5, and it also works with remainder. For example, a remainder equals 6. If you simply want to add a single unit to a value, or subtract a single unit, you can also use a shortcut to increment or decrement a value. For example, here I can create a variable a initialized with the value 5. Then, if I write a++, I add 1 unit to the value already contained in a. This is the same as writing a equal a plus 1. In the same way, to decrement, to remove 1 unit, I can write a minus minus. This is the same as writing a equal a minus 1. In C#, the plus operator is used to add numbers, but when strings are involved, it is also used to concatenate them. So this time we are no longer doing a calculation, but simply sticking strings together to create a new string. For example, if I declare a variable firstName here, which contains the value John. I can also declare a second variable lastName, which contains the value Doe. Now, if I try to combine these two strings, I can declare a variable fullName, which is equal to firstName plus, so here it's a concatenation, with a string that contains only one space, plus, again a concatenation, lastName. As a result, here, in my variable fullName, I have John space Doe. I concatenated the strings. Now let's test this in Unity. Create a new script and name it arithmetic operators, then open it in Visual Studio. In the start method, we'll use the operators and display the results in the console using debug.log. For example, here, we can declare a variable a of type int, which contains the value 10, a variable b, also of type int, containing the value 3, and then do some calculation. You could try adding a and b, a subtraction, a multiplication, a division, and a remainder. Let's display all this in the console using debug.log. Debug.log allows you to display text in the Unity console, and we've seen that the plus sign can be used to concatenate. So we might as well add some detail to what we are displaying in the console by adding addition concatenated with what's in the addition variable. We'll do the same thing with subtraction, multiplication, division, and remainder. Now let's go back into Unity to test. If you still have the game object you created in the previous episode, you can delete or deactivate it. We are going to create a new game object and add our script to it. Drag and drop the script onto our game object. Then click play and take a look at the console. The results of our calculations are displayed in the console. We have the results of addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and remainder. For division, be careful if you divide two integers. The result is a whole number. There is no decimal part. Here, the result of dividing 10 by 3 clearly shows the value 3. So we are going to try to change this by modifying our code a little and trying to store the results in a float variable to try to obtain the decimal part. Let's modify our script. So I changed the type of my variable division from int to float. I save my script and return to Unity to see if this has fixed our problem. And we can see that this changes absolutely nothing. When we divide two integers, we will always have only the integer part returned as a result of the division, regardless of whether we store the result in an int or a float. To correct this, we can perform a cast, which means transforming one type into another explicitly. Let's go back to Visual Studio. To perform a cast, you write the new type in parentheses in front of the variable you want to transform. Here, for example, I'm going to write float in parentheses in front of one of the two variables. I'll choose a, for example. Know that at least one of the two terms of the division is a float. The result will be a float, and we'll have the decimal part. We can save our script and go back and check in Unity. I click on play, look at the console, and see that we now have the decimal part displayed as the result of our division. Now let's go back into Visual Studio to test compound assignments. We can start by declaring a variable c, initialized with the value 5 for example, and making a few compound assignments, for example c plus equal 2. Then do a debug.log to display the results after this addition. Let's do the same thing with a minus equal 1, for example, a debug.log. We are now going to multiply by 3, divide by 2, and then remainder 3. Let's go back to Unity, press play, and have a look at the console. You can see that we have different results. The initial value of our variable was 5. We added 2, so after addition we have a value of 7. We then subtracted 1, so we have a value of 6. Multiplied by 3, and you get 18. We divided by 2 to get the value 9, and the remainder of the division by 3 is 0. Now let's test incrementing and decrementing in Visual Studio. We can declare a variable, call it g, and initialize it with the value 10. Then increment it. A debug.log to display the result. Then we'll do a decrement and again a debug.log. Let's go back to Unity to test this. We click on play, and we can see that our variable, initially with the value 10, after incrementation it has the value 11, and after decrementation it has the value 10 again. And that's it for this video on arithmetic operators in C#. I hope you found it useful. In the next video we'll talk about methods and how to use them to structure our code. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them in the comments. Thanks for watching and see you next time.